This is on restorative conferencing. Just want to welcome you. We say helping to repair significant harm. Usually restorative conferencing, if you remember yesterday, or actually in the introduction to restorative practices, we were talking about the continuum of restorative practices, and the very informal part of it is, oh, you know, we're using restorative communication and maybe some affective communication or affective statements, but now that's the informal. This is more on the formal end. Just so you know, this is when you're dealing more with significant harm. So you won't be running restorative conferences every day. You'd probably burn out. And so we'll talk about it. And the idea is that we want to increase understanding of restorative conferencing and how schools can benefit from adopting this empowering practice, increase competency and skills to facilitate restorative conferences and agreements after harm has been done, increase skills to facilitate building restorative conference agreements and a plan for support and success. So, and then like yesterday, you know, we said the foundational work of building trust and respect with students and staff is essential if we're going to be effective while implementing restorative conferencing. So remember that the foundation for all effective restorative justice practices is the building trust, building that respect, building community, building relationships. It's really like the foundation of a house. And if you don't do it well, the house is going to be skewed and it's going to be weakened in some ways. So, and then, all right, so you're going to hear this and you'll just hear a few minutes of it. So, and there's closed caption on this, so you'll be able to see that.
I guess we can start with Warren, since you're closest to me. If you can say what happened.
I went into the gift shop and I saw two monkeys, and I just saw the place was crowded. I didn't think twice, you know. I didn't think about the fact that I was getting off probation in 2 weeks. I didn't think about how stupid it would look if I got caught. I just thought, like, it'd be cute if I got one for my girlfriend. And it was crowded, so I picked it up, walked out, and next thing the lady came out. And I didn't come clean at first, so like I lied to Regina and Lisa and Renee.
What have you thought about since the incident?
I was thinking about why would I make such a stupid decision being so close to getting off probation and stuff.
Okay. And you mentioned Regina as being affected by your actions, and whom else?
Renee.
Renee.
And Lisa.
Okay.
And even Jackie was affected because we were late coming back and she missed her bus.
Anybody else?
Oh, my mom. My mom was affected.
How was your mom affected?
I let her down. Like, I was doing so good. She was like proud of me and stuff. She was all bragging to my IP counselor how good I've been doing and stuff.
You mentioned that Renee and Regina and Lisa were affected. Can you tell us, okay, how they were affected? Can you tell us how Regina, Renee, and Lisa were affected?
I lied to Lisa, like, directly to her face too. Like, even when we got back, like, she asked me, and like, I was just like so scared because I'm just so close to getting off probation, and I really want to get off because I've been on so long.
So Lisa was affected. She felt lied to.
And she was hurt because she trusted me.
And Renee, how was she affected?
I lied to her also. She knew I was lying, and I just made it out to everybody that it was just a big misunderstanding. And Renee saw right through it, and like I just continued to lie to her. I'm sorry.
And Regina?
Regina took her, she's my counselor, she's my new counselor. I let her down. We had a really good day besides that beforehand. I think that's what really let her down at the end of the day, because she didn't expect me to do such a thing.
And so let me now, I'm going to just share the screen and I'm going to ask Erica, would you read this? I know this is Braithwaite's hypothesis, but just kind of read through what you see there, please.
Separating the deed from the doer. Restorative conferences promotes the act, unacceptable behavior, to be rejected because they failed to meet expectations or standards, while acknowledging the intrinsic worth of the person and their potential contribution to society.
Thank you, Erica. And what does that mean to you? What, I know it's a lot of words and stuff, but what does it mean to you?
I guess, well, I understand, you look at the action rather than the person, and each of us is sum of many parts and not just one action. But the thing that I'm still stuck on is the unacceptable behavior, because that still sounds judgmental to me, which surprises me.
Ah, okay.
I would maybe say like unexpected or unwelcome or something.
That's good. Good point. So by the way, I really welcome all the different thoughts like that, because some people might say, I would prefer saying harmful behavior or something like that. So be thinking of these things. This is what I was hoping people would do. I appreciate that. And the idea is that, really that throughout the whole process, we should always continue to acknowledge the intrinsic worth, right? Their value as a human being, right? Through the whole process, even if sometimes, you can be in a conference. Sometimes I've been in one, I remember where a couple of the people really, or actually a few of the people in the circle started feeling like the person who did the harm wasn't showing enough remorse. But I was in that circle and I thought, well, he's young and I don't know, maybe he's nervous and he's not really, understanding. It's not really his job to show all the remorse that you might expect. But he was there, he was present, and he was participating. And so I don't know, I just kind of, like Erica's saying, we have to be careful about our judgments. Kristen, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Would you be willing to read this slide for us, please?
Oh, sure. Needs of harmed people. Opportunity to express emotions, acknowledgement from loved ones, assurance what happened was unfair and undeserved, offender held accountable, financial/material restitution, possible contact with offender, then going down apology, questions answered, assurance of safety.
Thank you, Kristen. And Kristen, I know you just read over, but is there anything in this that resonates with you that you feel like maybe harmed people need to, they have these needs to be able to kind of restore in this way?
I guess opportunity to express emotions.
Yeah. It's really needed, right? For people to be able to go through a healing process. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. It's just working through those emotions and, coming to that, resolution is so important.
Yeah. And if people could have the opportunity to learn how to express their emotions and that it's safe, for example, those that work with you, Kristen, and other people here, if they could start to learn hey, it's okay. You're actually encouraged to express your emotions. Maybe they won't just push them down and then try to cover them up by kind of like usually what's, what do we use? Oftentimes alcohol, drugs, other
Mhm.
types, right? Other types of harmful things.
Right.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So Rosa, can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you, even if I'm
Okay.
on my car. Yeah, okay.
And
Yes, I agree. There should be long terms rather than short terms, and every school should have their own committee. Absolutely.
all right. Thank you, Rosa. Would you be willing to read this for us, Daphne?
Yeah, sure thing. So for developing restorative systems, all staff trained in implementing restorative practices, relationships and community building is a high priority. Students are developed as restorative leaders. Efforts are intentional, strategic, and consistent. Restorative leadership team gives support and coaching. School data monitored for impact. Circles build connection, trust, and reintegrate offenders. And there's consistent feedback and communication.
That's great, Daphne. Thank you for reading that. And now that you've read it, was there anything that kind of resonated a little bit more deeply with you on this?
I guess I'm just thinking about in terms of, I think it's so important to see this at the school and district level, but then also like teaching this with students, making sure there's transparency that this is not necessarily what, for example, like our criminal justice system looks like, and having an acknowledgement for like when students leave schooling, what the realities might be, whether they are able to become comfortable with these systems within schooling, what the reality is going to be outside for them.
That's good point. I think it's, especially if you're trying to create that real supportive environment and stuff, it's not always that supportive out in the community. Mm-hmm. So you want to be able to say, hey, this is great and let's keep doing it. But, just know that sometimes out in the community, you're going to face a lot of different ways that people are going to treat you, and just, be prepared for that, right? And give people that ability to have a voice. So thank you. And then Laura, was there anything on this one resonate with you?
Yeah, I love the idea of building a system, as everyone seems to be in agreement on. Students developed as restorative leaders, that definitely stands out to me. I've seen time and again that, the more the practice is inclusive with kind of a lowering of hierarchy, so to speak, and we're all teachers, we're all learners, and everyone has a stake in building community as a leader and as a contributor, the more effective and impactful it can be.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you, Laura. And I know, I know you believe in it, not just by word, but by action. So thank you. So yeah, think about that, and just, if somebody's ever asking you, you'll have this slide, we'll send this to you, but just if anyone's ever asking you, well, how can we develop a restorative system? Show them, well, start working on some of these right here, and by the way, relationships and community building has to be a very high priority. If you're just focusing on restorative conferencing and you're not focusing on community building and relationship building, you're really not going to be effective. So just know that. So I'm going to end up showing you now this video. So let me stop the share here for a moment. All right. So this is the one that I was telling you where the young man, he was caught selling drugs on campus and he was incarcerated. So he went to juvenile hall. As this goes on, I really, especially when he's talking, I want you to kind of listen to what he's saying, just the different comments, and then think about like what this one circle has done, for him, maybe even for his family and for the people around in the circle, because everyone is experiencing some form of restoration, and also think of, what did it take for the person who organized this, like the amount of work it took him to prepare for this? And I also want you to know this is not what we call a traditional restorative conference. this is what's called a reentry circle, right? Which is really, it's another form of restorative confidence. But it's, if you notice, he really puts his own, I guess, twist on it in some ways. So just kind of check it out and let's see what you think.
All eyes is on me. I was always sweating in the hands and stuff. I was always nervous. My mom and my dad was there. It made me feel like walking out the damn room. That's what it made me feel like, dude. I feel like just canceling this and be like, nah, I'm good. It was too much attention.
Good evening. I'm really, really happy to see all of the people here to support my man. And I'm excited about how we're going to make this transition from there to here and beyond. First of all, I don't care about him feeling uncomfortable. I know where that feeling is coming. That feeling is coming from a place where I don't know what's going on here. And this is different. The problem is when a kid doesn't want to be in circle, it's because I don't trust you. So I can't trust that process. So we have more relationship building to do. So Pierre?
I like the quote, self-sufficiency isn't a destination, it is an everlasting journey. Yeah.
This is gonna be our talking piece. When you have the talking piece, you're the only one that's talking. But it gives everybody else permission to listen. So the listeners are the most important. We may do a round. So when you were a kid, what you wanted to be when you was little. This kid went through a lot of the same things that I went through when I was a kid. And if not me, definitely somebody that I know. It allows us to empathize when everybody has to answer those questions.
When I was a kid, I always loved working with kids. And so I found the field of school psychology.
And when I was a child, I remember my main thing was wanting to be a cosmetologist.
Be actually still now. I wanted to be a race car driver.
As a kid, I wanted to be a preacher.
When I was a little girl, I really wanted to be a singer.
I just wanted to make my community better.
I've always wanted to be a healer. I think that I'm in the process of doing that now. I always wanted to be happy, and I am.
And when it gets to Cedric, we're all listening for
My name is Cedric.
what makes him like us.
What I want to do, a lot of us kids, play football.
It lets the people in circle know that we're all pretty much the same. We're here to welcome, support, and navigate him through this school year, and hopefully through the rest of his life. So in this next round, we're going to agree on the things that we need in order to be able to have this conversation. This talking piece gives everybody else permission to listen deeply. Without values, we're not listening deeply. We're waiting on our opportunity to talk. If there's a value that you don't agree with, we're going to do another round and say, I don't agree with that value, we'll talk about it.
Commitment.
Respect.
Always speak your truth.
Integrity.
Compassion. Honesty.
Forgiveness. Empathy. It's important to be connected. Sensitivity.
Discipline. I started noticing that I wasn't here to stereotype me. I was here to help me and see what was going on in my head. So I started to loosen up a little bit. Self-confidence. Last year I didn't have confidence. I would tell you, I always get kicked out of class for smelling like a pound of weed in class. So I was doing bad last year.
An open heart.
All right. We're going to talk about what do you have to give to support Cedric. And I want you to talk directly to Cedric. I'm the person who you can come to any time of day. I am the person who will be your brother, who will be your uncle. I got your back. I got stuff for you. Come and get it. Especially our kids, study keeping it real. That's their whole life. Who's real, who's not real. And they can tell better than any one of us if you're keeping it real. And I say this in front of everybody because if I don't, I need all of these people to hold me accountable.
I'm the person that's always going to be honest with you.
I'm the person you can count on. I'm a person you can also just say, hey, I need to talk to you, even if you need that.
But I'm also gonna be that person that loves you to death. All right?
And I am the person who's going to ensure that you will get your high school diploma and beyond with your life.
Make me blush. I don't know, y'all touched me. Y'all touched me. Y'all made me feel like I can do it.
I'm gonna be the person that reminds you that you can be whatever you want to be.
At first, I couldn't trust them. But then they looked me dead in the eye. They started telling the truth about how they really felt and what they can do. So I was like, okay, I can give them a chance.
I'm the person who you can relate to in school.
I'm a person who is also walking the road of success, and I reach my hand out to you. Walk with me.
I get all y'all to do a circle like this for me tomorrow. The change of the culture begins to form. So now we're going to talk about needs, which is kind of like the hardest thing that we need to talk about. Whatever your needs are, I don't want you to shy away from them. Let us say no. Don't assume that we're going to say no. For me, my number one goal is I want him to hear how each one of us are prepared to support him. And I want him to challenge us when he feels like he needs that support that we promised him. I'm gonna need you to be open and fearless, because this road to your success is gonna be tough. And I will walk through the fire with you, but you gotta come with me.
I'm gonna need you to have the most confidence in the world in working. Nobody tell you nothing about your education doesn't come first.
There's never been a situation where everybody in his school life was so concerned about her kids' well-being, and you're gonna be the main focus of that circle. She's never been the main focus of nothing, probably.
Whenever you need to talk to somebody and you need that confidence from someone, call them. Anytime. It doesn't matter.
I never listened to my mom like that. So
I need you to, grow to be a man who you want to follow from. That's what I need from you. Because sometimes when I ask you, I need some help. And when you feel, when I say I need you, you look at me sometimes and give me a head nod. I'm like, no, talk to me. Talk to me. Because I don't know what's on your mind.
I was like, I do have to start talking to him more, because I just go out and do whatever I want. I do stuff like my father was supposed to do. Like, I was peer pressured to do all the stuff I was doing. I just did it because my family needed it.
I'd rather not pass on any time being around you. I just want you to grow and understand who you are. Thank you.
I just need to keep myself motivated. But I know I can do it, I just don't be motivated.
Everybody in this room got your back.
I'm gonna pause it there. Just I wanted you to see kind of the main part of it. You'll have access to this, but you definitely get the feel for what the process is there, right? Of trying to welcome him back into the school after he did what he did, and so it kind of speaks a little bit to what Eva brought up earlier about he was selling drugs on his campus. He had to go do some time, but he came back to the campus. And what I appreciate was the school wanted to embrace him. Because I've had other schools sometimes, they kind of make all these excuses of why that child can't come back into their school. And they kind of put roadblocks there, right? And so I really appreciate this school because they said, hey, if we're going to take this young person back, we have to rally around him, right? We have to show him something different, because if it's just the same old thing, he's going to have the same old problems, But if young people are going to change, we have to change. Things around him have to change. These are young people. They just don't change off of thin air. I mean, we are the ones that should be models for the change that we want to see in him. This is what I've noticed now in my experience, and many other facilitators have experienced this. Effective preparation for a restorative conference will typically determine if your conference runs smoothly with positive outcomes. Poor preparation oftentimes produces more harm in the conference. So just be aware of that. The times that I've seen things go sideways, and I've talked to I talked to myself one time because I did something that was not smart, and I didn't prepare well, and it didn't go well. But I've had to talk to some other facilitators and be like, hey, what happened there? And they were like, well, I really didn't have a chance to meet with that person before I brought them in, or, I only had a quick conversation. I really needed to spend more time. So really what everyone has told me, it's usually the preparation that was off. And so when you think of a process, it's really about the offender talks about the incident, right? Others, including the person who was harmed, relate how they have been affected, including like the supporters that person who did the harm. They're allowed to bring in like their parent or a supporter. And so they also say how they've been affected. And then participants decide how to repair the harm. And that's what's called the agreement phase. And then breaking the bread is kind of like after you're done with everything, then you have like a little bit of snacks, and you just kind of have a little time to just, I don't want to say have fun, but just release and just kind of like, drink some water and have a few snacks. Now I want to go over the script with you that's put out by the International Institute for Restorative Practices. They have a script, and they're pretty strict about it, but I want you to read over this script. And so, Robert, what's the best way for us to do that?
Here we go. So it'll be linked in the chat box.
So if you don't mind, click on the link that Robert has shared in the chat box, open that up, and you're going to see like 3 to 4 pages, and they literally provide you a script, for the people that, just want to like almost like read off of a script for their conference. That's okay. I've seen that happen. As long as you do it and you're kind of still personable, like it can work. But most of the people that I've worked with, they kind of use this script that you see, they use that as a template, and then they create their own script, their own guide. They create an agenda. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to look over that, and then we'll talk about it. So, these are the combined questions that we went over yesterday. And so you may like the questions the way they're laid out here, but some people are like, well, with the people who were harmed and the people who did the harm, I like to use these combined questions, just the same ones for them. But if you noticed, when you're talking about the supporters, these questions might not be as useful. So you might want to use exactly the supporter questions from this script. So this is kind of like, just so you know, this is kind of like the homework that a facilitator has to do. They have to kind of go through and sort of look, are these the questions that I want or not want? Do I want to do this? And you tweak and you change. This is kind of like a typical seating plan, where like if you're the facilitator, that's right there that you can see in bold. Like the way I've done it most of the time when I set it up, it's like, the primary, like the offender is sitting where you see where it says offender to my right, but the primary offender supporter is right in between us. And then if they have another supporter, they're right by them. And on the other side is the, in quotes, the victim or the person that was harmed. And then there's their primary supporter and then another supporter. That's if they call on them. Sometimes people are like, oh, I just want my dad to come. That's it. All right, that's fine. Or, you know, I just want my mom, or I just want my aunt, or it's people can decide who they want. But the reason why it's good for you to decide, you don't have to follow that. You could switch them up, you could do whatever, but what you want to do is you want to get comfortable with a certain type of like a format for you, because you're trying to remember a lot, right? You're going, okay, I'm talking to the primary offender supporter now, so who's going to come after that, and who, you know what I mean? So it's good when you have things set up that makes it easier for you. So just know this, you know, this is only a 3-hour training. So this is just kind of in some ways, getting you familiar with some of this. You're going to have to do your own homework. You're going to have to follow up on stuff and read about things, and you know, maybe even practice with colleagues. That usually when I've had the 2-day these trainings, because they used to allow me to do face-to-face, the 2-day trainings, I could do like role plays with stuff, and I could have people practice with the script, without the script, if they wanted to try that. So now it's on you. You're going to have to develop ways to do this with colleagues, if it's something you're really interested in. So now I want to show you another clip, and you're going to see in this clip, you're going to see that they didn't follow this, like, because the main facilitator, when you're looking at it, it's kind of like it's just different. There's 2 facilitators, and one of the facilitators sits on the other side. So yeah, so let me just show you what this looks like. And this is in a high school, and it's and there's some LGBTQ issues that come up. There's some racial issues that come up. And I just want you to see how the facilitator kind of is asking questions and trying to get people to be authentic. Okay, so she's going to be asking somebody that would be considered, in this case, the offender. If you notice, the offender in this case is sitting to her left.
As possible. So nothing that we share here will be held against us outside of this space. It's really just to be as open, as honest as possible. So the one caveat to the confidentiality form is mandatory reporting. So Derek, if you can share with us what happened and what you can take responsibility for.
So one day we were in class, and David was talking to somebody else, not me. And, you know, he was talking about sports. So I kind of chimed in, you know, I jumped in the conversation, and I said, you know, what do you know about sports? You know, and I called him a derogatory name, but.
What did you call him?
I said he was gay. And, you know, I didn't really mean nothing by it at first. I mean, it's a joke. You know, everybody laughed. But now I see that that was wrong. And that can be really hurtful to somebody. So I didn't really think nothing of it at the time. You know, he didn't really say nothing. And, you know, we went on with our day. Later on in the week, I saw him, and I, you know, kind of bumped into him a little bit. And I called him another derogatory name.
What was that name?
I called him a faggot. And after that, you know, I think we ran into each other one more time. And maybe he was fed up with me kind of bothering him. So we got into a little bit of a heated argument. I said some things, he said some things, And I just got really mad at some of the words and stuff he was saying about me. So I just beat him up. That's it.
And Derek, how did that main incident start? You said you beat him up. But can you give us a little more detail about that?
Yeah, I was kind of messing with him in the locker room and stuff. I said, you know, you probably do like to play football with boys, huh? And, you know, I think that kind of was the last straw for him. Because then he said something about me being black. And, you know, he said some derogatory terms towards me being black. And I just got furious, and I just took off on him. Meaning I started hitting him.
How are you feeling at the time when all that was happening?
I guess I knew it was wrong, but at the time, you don't really think about being wrong or really reflecting on what I was doing. I wasn't really thinking, you know, just kind of doing something just to do it. And then, you know, when he said those things about me, like I couldn't stand it, you know. And that's when I really just wasn't thinking, because I was angry.
Thank you, Derek.
David, would you like to share your perspective of the incident?
One of my friends were talking about football, the game that just happened recently. And then Derek came in, was like, what do you know about football, you know? You're gay. And so, you know, everybody else is laughing, but like for me, you know, that kind of hurt. And I was thinking about it a bit, and then later on in the week, I was walking down, and then he bumped me threw another derogatory word my way. And then a little bit later, you know, we was kind of fed up with everything. And so, you know, we were in the locker room and we were just doing our thing, whatever. And then he said something. And then I threw a racial slur at him. And then
David, what was that?
I called him a monkey. So, and then also said a couple other words throughout when we were throwing words at each other. So there was that too. And then, I don't know, I kind of just lost it because I'm done with being picked on. And I always have been. So there was that too.
And how are you feeling at that time?
At the time, I don't know, I kind of just blanked out a bit. And it was just rage, really. Kind of just blacked out. And just kind of, that's about it. I think one of us threw a punch, and then from there, it escalated to a fight in general.
He feels uncomfortable because he's never done this before. And I just feel like, yeah, like I'm disappointed that he said that, especially because I always talk to him about culture and respecting other people's cultures. But at this point, it's like, I can just imagine why he did that. He was tired of being bullied. He's been bullied like since he was elementary. And yeah, it wasn't right for him to fight back. At the same time, who was he gonna tell? And I'm shocked that he didn't tell me, because I always thought we had a good relationship. And now I'm thinking that it was my fault because I wasn't with him, I wasn't talking to him, and I'm busy in school, working 2 jobs. My mom's in the hospital. Something could have gone really bad that day.
Esmeralda, what was your experience like that day, like when you heard about what happened to David?
When I got a call from the vice principal, I was scared. I was scared that he was seriously injured because he wasn't really telling me a lot over the phone. And So when I went to pick him up, I was just worried, like, what happened to him?
Mom, what was your experience that day? You touched on it a little bit, but you know, the first time that you heard about this was when Derek came home that day?
Well, no, I got a phone call first from the school, from Mr. Cooper, that he had been involved in a fight. And as parents, you immediately jump to, well, what did somebody do to him? But then I had to just step back and realize that I know my son's been struggling. I know he's been unhappy and he's been angry about the relationship, you know, with his father. So for me, it just felt like deja vu. You know, his dad went to prison for something that I told him we should not, you know, he should not be involved in. We should not be participating in, but he felt like for a short period of time he can get his hustle on and then we can come out of our situation. So finally, he's out and we're trying to get reestablished, and then he jumps into something. So it was like, man, law enforcement. I was tired of it, and I was hurt, and I was disappointed.
What about you, Mr. Johnson? What was that day like for you when you heard about it?
I was, you know, definitely disappointed and whatnot. But, you know, Derek, he's a good kid. You know, he's you know, he tries to stay on top of his studies and, you know, and do the right thing for the most part. And truthfully, I know a lot of his struggles is because of me, you know, and I've been trying to reconnect with him and let him know that I'm here, you know. But it's, you know, he's had to step up, you know, and be the man in the house for a while. And now that I'm back, I know it's kind of difficult for him, you know, trying to do stuff. And
you might want to start small with lower level offenses, right? In the beginning, consider using a co-facilitator. You might not, you know, don't go right into like super serious offenses involving severe trauma for victims without appropriate experience. And then discuss and plan with leadership how best to implement both informal and formal restorative conferences as an alternative to typical discipline. And by the way, I like that they bring that up here, because some of you, in some of the things that you listed out, I would think, yeah, that sounds like kind of like an informal conference, right? And that's fine. Do those, do informal conferences for things that come up that aren't like super serious, but you might want to start with some of those things and ask questions and get used to these things. Provide follow-up to participants of restorative conferences to assure longer term success. If that's what I noticed, if you definitely want to have a plan, and then you want to see who's going to follow up with that, right? Because it's easy to put something on a piece of paper, but you got to put somebody's name on there, like who's going to make sure that they get to that service and who's going to do this. So yeah, definitely those things are really, really important. So one of the things is maybe what we could do is just, if you feel like you have a few minutes, to just put one takeaway, right? Just might have been a video you saw or something that a conversation that you had in your small groups or something that we talked about. Just one takeaway is a good way to do a closing circle. And then, yeah, we'll be pretty much done. And there is a good resource in the community called the National Conflict Resolution Center. They actually run a lot of community conferencing in San Diego, and now they're kind of expanding out to the North County. So they are quite good. I've attended and helped with some of their conferences. So just kind of look at some of these comments, if you don't mind, just kind of like see what people are saying here. Students need to feel safe to be able to be successful. Right on. Thank you for all these comments. I so appreciate the richness that all of you, by putting things in like this, it just creates a much richer experience. Definitely, restorative solutions are more effective than punitive solutions, that's for sure. And just know that you saw only a portion of those videos, okay? So yeah, just know that like a lot of facilitators, what they do is they open up with something kind of like to kind of just ease people in, right? They don't just jump in. Some people do a mindfulness activity as well. All right, well, we appreciate you all, and thank you, for those of you who filled out the evaluation, but hopefully we'll see you either at another training or via email, or who knows, maybe we'll see you face to face sometime soon. So take care and have a great rest of your Thursday.